Hey everybody, how's it going?
Pretty good. How's it going?
Pretty good. Happy Thursday.
Yeah,
For a short week, this still feels pretty long.
it's been crazy.
Are we expecting anyone else or ready to get started? I know of the people who usually come, Natalie is out today. Yeah.
Javier said that he'll join, but I don't see him. And I'm not next to my computer because I got an update. It's been running for so long. So sorry about that.
Eventually you gotta give in to its complaining and just update it.
I didn't expect it to happen, but yeah, whatever.
All right, let's get started then. Is everyone mostly signed in? No new faces. Status updates? I can go first because it'll be very short because I really haven't done much on the life cycle since the last time I talked to you all because I was spring one last week. I'm also going to be mostly busy with non-direct CMB project work this week, just to give everyone a heads up.
I guess I can go next. I'm working with Joe on kind of getting a rough implementation of Stack Buildpacks. So moving that along, fixing some Windows things here and there. And so continue pushing forward on that really at this point. I think we're going to try to do the build plan stuff and kind of scope that out and see how that feels after the discussions yesterday. So.
That's cool. Anyone else?
I've been working with Molly on moving the release, lifecycle release to GitHub Actions. It's still in progress, and I hope we'll finish this this week or the beginning of next
week. That's a nice segue, I think, directly into release planning because thanks to everyone's hard work and our willingness to kick stuff out to future releases, I think we're ready to ship a patch as soon as we finish up moving over the release automation that I was just talking about. So I haven't gotten a lot of, no one's really clamoring for this one, but I think we should ship it as soon as the new automation is ready. Cool. In the future topics, I copied down this lifecycle topic. So I was assuming this was intended for the implementation meeting rather than the platform meeting, but I didn't necessarily put it here. Does anyone in this meeting want to talk to this?
Yeah, I put it there. And you are correct that it is for implementation. This came up today within our VMware stand-up in regards to the PR that is linked there. And it talks about how the user and pack have like this kind of, preconceived notion of assumptions of defaults that should be there. And in part of that discussion, I think one of the things that came up to light was the fact that these defaults, there's no like real contract around them as far as the spec is concerned. So when we send out, like a very simplified image name, like my app, there are a couple of things that GGCR is doing for us, which is adding the default domain, a library, I believe, in some cases, and then the latest tag. But I do know that there's other tooling in the ecosystem, like Containerd and some other platforms that do not do this automated defaulting to Docker Hub specific stuff. So again, ultimately, I think the question is like one of two ways is, do we want to move away from this default on the lifecycle side of things as one of the long-term solutions? Or do we want to like codify this default behavior that we're inheriting from GGCR in a spec? Because I think when I think about like, this interface between the platform and the lifecycle, I want to always keep thinking about what if we used another implementation of the lifecycle, right? And I feel like this is a missing piece in this kind of interface or exchange.
It's an interesting question. I feel like the reason GGCR does it is because Docker daemon does it, right? So if you're building, if like one of our build targets is a Docker daemon, and then you Docker pull or push those images, those defaults are getting applied. So in some ways it makes sense to treat, I think either treat remote images the same way the daemon will, so it's consistent, or I guess the other option is make people be completely explicit all the time and always include a registry, but that might throw some Docker users off, right?
Right, and I think that's where the question comes in of maybe the difference between the lifecycle as like an internal component that platforms talk to, and then platforms that then provide a nicer experience in a way, right? I guess very similar to how the Docker for Mac or the Docker daemon would create some sort of assumptions, but containerd, which is used underneath it, doesn't have those assumptions, right? And then to speak to GTCR, I also linked it on there. There is a setting when we do the parse reference where right now we're using the weak. I forget what the term is, but we're using the weak setting, which then creates these defaults. And they do have a strict setting, which does not provide these defaults. So I think GGCR enables both, to be supported. So I don't know, speaking to like why they did it, but there is that option there as well.
So I guess what's the ask like concretely?
So I think to reiterate, the ask is one of two things that we'd like to see. The contract between platform and lifecycle to explicitly say that these defaults are going to be taken into effect.
Or put it in the spec, like when you pass a tag or digest reference, the lifecycle must interpret it or should interpret these defaults when they're missing.
Correct, yes. Or B, remove that, right? Since it's not there right now, don't do those defaults.
That makes sense to me. From a cleanliness perspective, I like the latter. I don't love these Docker Hub specific defaults, but I do wonder if it's, for the sake of intellectual consistency, we'll be abusing our users if we got rid of them, because most people are used to being able to say their Docker Hub, like I'll say EKKC, my run image, and expect it to work. And if we force people to put index.docker.io in there when they don't have to do that in Kubernetes, even though Kubernetes uses containerd a lot of times under the hood or in other tools, I feel like it would really confuse people.
So within the K8s ecosystem, given that a lot of these tools don't default, do they actually default if you're trying to run an image?
Yeah, K8s defaults
Okay.
to index.docker.io.
Yeah, I think defaulting it and documenting it seems like I like the cleanliness of passing a full reference all the time, but I feel like that's sort of a step too far for folks who are getting used to it and used to Kubernetes and Docker.
Yeah. I don't know. I really, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth just because I dread the fact that it just always defaulting to Docker Hub. But I see the usefulness from a user's perspective, but I think that's why I would ultimately, like, a very small inclination is to just rely on the platforms to create that default.
We could let Pack create the default, but then I think we'll get a bunch of questions about Tecton,
Right. Yeah.
and other platforms. Like, I know right now Pack actually does explicitly expand the reference, right, before passing it in. I know KPack doesn't, but the results are the same because, as you said, Lifecycle has the defaults built in.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what we were trying to resolve here. And this is where we landed on this, preconceived notion or assumption that we're both making, is that GGCR is doing this for us, or being used in both places.
I feel like it's bigger than GGCR. Like, I hate it too, but it's Docker and it's Kate's and it's bigger than us. I don't know if we can change it just because we don't like it without antagonizing users.
Yep. Okay. That sounds good. I guess, what are the next steps? Are we just creating a PR to define the world that exists right now without having to go through the RFC process?
It seems like the kind of thing we could contribute directly to the spec because it's a description of what exists. So I don't know if we need a bunch of people to vote on the fact that we should do it in advance in an RFC.
Cool. Maybe we could get the spec thing out there, and then if core team pushes back, we could go to the RFC.
Do you want to handle creating a issue for that on the spec?
Yeah, I could do that, and then I'll see if anybody on the VMware side of things wants to pick it up, take it on.
Cool.
Thank you.
Seems like that's all we got on the agenda for today. Does anyone else have any late breaking topics they want to discuss? Any questions come up with the stack pack work, Jesse? Do you need any help from the rest of us to get that moving?
Yeah, I'm still trying to catch up with Joe here a bit. I think he's going to kind of describe what he thinks he wants to do with the build plan. I think he was running into, I think his current path forward is to kind of prepend the stack packs into all the different groups before running it, instead of sort of treating it like its own step. And then I guess remove those at the end. I think he might have been running some concurrency things. And so I'm sure there may be some questions around how to get this done in a easy to maintain manner, but we'll see how it's going. It's a bit early, I think, to call out for help at this
Makes
point.
sense. I want to read through those updated RFCs. I have a very practical question sort of about the experimental work on stack packs. What do we think is the plan for, seems like there's a desire to merge it and let people use it experimentally, maybe even before we've defined it all in the spec. But when we're doing sort of the API versions RFC, we kicked out all the experimental parts because they're a little controversial. Do we have what is in your and Joe's mind the plan for how and when we would merge or let users access this feature?
Yeah, I don't know what Joe's plan is, but I thought the assumption was we're just sort of getting a head start and kind of conforming to the RFCs as they change. And if any of the RFCs kind of land, then we would merge that piece of it potentially, right?
You're
like
thinking...
right now, there's no mix-in stuff in this current PR, so there's a chance that, like, as long as the people are generally kind of happy with the mix-in stuff, then maybe stack Buildpacks as a feature without the mix-in would be merged in. And once the RFC for that is particularly approved. So I think it's mostly Joe kind of trying to understand whether this fits and actually produces what we want it to do at this point, and kind of to get a more solid ground on how to build this thing out.
So there's no desire to merge it before we merge the RFCs.
I don't think so, because I think the main use case for using this is sort of the certificate stuff right now. Like we don't actually have an internal use for stack build packs right now, and so like our desire to get this through is mostly just for like the project itself. And so I think obviously I know Ben and others have wanted a better solution for the certificate stuff, and so I think if we could get to a point that would solve those issues, then we would want to merge as soon as everyone's ready.
People demand their CA certs.
That's right.
I do wonder if I'm like worried about, right now we haven't made a lot of other large changes since this work started, and I'm worried about saddling you guys with a really gnarly merge conflict if something larger came up. This could be an opportunity to, like, even though we're not going to expose this to users, merge it in behind a feature flag so no one can use it, just to make your lives easier. But maybe we're not at that point yet because it's not close enough to being stable.
Yeah, merging sounds like a huge pain. Just keeping up with it is already sort of painful, and we haven't really tried to merge from main, I don't think.
Especially when you're messing with concurrency code, potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll bring that up with Joe today and see if he wants to, if we want to kind of gate all this work behind a feature flag and see where that gets us maybe.
Cool. All right. Sounds like that's it for today.
See y'all next time.
Have a good one, everybody.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.
See ya.